Okay, gotta admit, when I hear the word algorithm, like my eyes kind of glaze over a little bit. It just sounds so, I don't know, technical, right? But here's the thing. The whole idea of algorithms, like the root of it all, goes back to a guy named Al-Khwarizmi. And his story is anything but boring. You ready to dive in?
Oh, absolutely. And what's so fascinating is we're not just talking about some, math genius from way back when. Al-Khwarizmi's influence is like all around us. It's even in our pockets. We're going to unpack why we even use the word algorithm in the first place.
So we've got excerpts from a source all about his life and work. And wow, let me tell you, this guy was foundational to both algebra and algorithms.
Talk about a double whammy.
Yeah.
It all begins in the 9th century. Al-Khwarizmi was born around 780 CE in Khorasan, which is modern-day Uzbekistan. But his story really, it takes off when he ends up in Baghdad.
Baghdad. Now, wasn't that like the place to be back then?
Think Silicon Valley, but in the 9th century. Baghdad was this incredible center of learning and culture during the Islamic Golden Age. And Al-Khwarizmi worked at a place called the House of Wisdom.
Okay, House of Wisdom. That sounds pretty intriguing. Was it like a giant library?
It was way more than just a library. Imagine a space where scholars from all over the world are collaborating, translating ancient texts, from Greece, India, Persia, you name it. They weren't just absorbing knowledge, they were actively debating, building upon each other's work. It was this dynamic environment that really allowed brilliance to flourish.
So this hub of intellectual energy, and that's where Al-Khwarizmi comes in.
Right. And one of his most famous works was, get this, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing. Even the title's a mouthful.
Yeah, they weren't messing around with brevity back then. But this book, this is where algebra comes from, right?
You got it. Algebra actually stems from the Arabic word al-Jabr, used right there in the title. Now, I know math isn't, everyone's favorite thing, but Al-Khwarizmi's work was truly revolutionary. He laid out systematic ways to solve linear and quadratic equations, things that people were, really struggling with before.
Oh, can you imagine trying to figure out these complex problems without, like, a system like algebra?
It'd be a nightmare. And think about this. Al-Khwarizmi's algebra wasn't just theoretical. It helped people solve real-world problems. Things like dividing an inheritance fairly, accurately measuring land, or even navigating tricky trade deals. These were huge issues back then, and his work made them solvable.
Wow, so he was like the ultimate problem solver. But how does this connect to algorithms? This is where I'm getting a little lost.
It's all about the approach. See, Al-Khwarizmi didn't use the word algorithm, but his step-by-step methods for solving problems are essentially what we recognize as algorithms today. Think of it like a recipe, right? You follow a specific set of instructions in a particular order to get to your delicious cake.
Or like those instructions to assemble furniture, where one wrong step throws everything off.
Yeah.
So basically, a set of rules leading to a solution.
Precisely. And this was a big deal back then. Al-Khwarizmi was introducing logic and structure into problem solving in a way that had never been done before. And his impact goes even further. Remember those numbers we use every day, 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Al-Khwarizmi was instrumental in bringing the Hindu-Arabic numeral system to the West.
Hold on. You're telling me the numbers I use to check my bank balance, order takeout, those numbers, are thanks to this guy from the 9th century. That's mind-blowing.
It really is. These numerals were much more efficient for calculations than the Roman numerals they were using in Europe at the time. Al-Khwarizmi's work popularized their use, which had a huge impact on the development of math and science.
So we're talking ripple effects across centuries.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this deep dive is going to get really interesting.
And we're just scratching the surface. Remember the House of Wisdom? It wasn't just about math. Al-Khwarizmi also made important contributions to astronomy and geography.
All right, I'm hooked. Tell me more about his work in those fields.
Well, he improved upon existing astronomical tables, which were vital for things like navigation and understanding the movements of planets and stars. His work in geography, especially his book Kitab al-Ard, or The Image of the Earth, significantly improved upon earlier maps. He even contributed to more accurate measurements of the Earth's circumference.
So he was basically refining the world as they knew it back then. Pretty impressive for someone working with the tools of the 9th century, right?
Absolutely. And what's even more incredible is how his work spread. Al-Khwarizmi's writings were translated into Latin, which was the language of scholarship in Europe at the time. This is where his legacy really takes off.
Okay, so his work gets translated into Latin. I'm guessing that's where things get really interesting in terms of his impact.
You're catching on quickly. This translation meant that European scholars, even centuries later during the Renaissance, were reading and being influenced by al-Khwarizmi's ideas.
Wait, whoa. We're talking like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, that whole era? They were learning from someone who lived in ninth century Baghdad.
It's an amazing connection, isn't it? This flow of knowledge helped fuel the scientific revolution in Europe. Calculus, physics, astronomy, these fields wouldn't be what they are today without the foundation laid by thinkers like al-Khwarizmi.
So he's this unseen force shaping centuries of scientific progress. I'm starting to see how his work has had this ripple effect across time.
Exactly. And it's not just history. This brings us right to you, right now, in the 21st century. Every time you use a search engine, your smartphone, any computer program, you're interacting with the legacy of al-Khwarizmi.
Okay, now you've really got my attention. Yeah. How on earth does a scholar from the ninth century connect to my smartphone?
Remember how we talked about algorithms being those step-by-step instructions to solve a problem? Well, computers run on algorithms. Every app, every website, every piece of software, they're all built on a foundation of logical instructions. It's all about processing information in a precise way to get a specific result.
So the code that powers all of our digital devices is basically a super complex version of what al-Khwarizmi was doing way back when.
Think of it this way. Imagine you're searching for something on Google. How does Google decide which results to show you first? It's using an algorithm. It takes your keywords, analyzes website popularity, factors in your location, and ranks the information in a way that's designed to be most useful to you. That logical, structured approach to problem solving, that has al-Khwarizmi's fingerprints all over it.
Suddenly, I'm seeing my phone in a totally different light. It's like a little window into this vast history of ideas.
That's a great way to put it, and it shows how knowledge builds upon itself over time. We're constantly benefiting from the work of those who came before us.
It's kind of humbling, you know? Here's this guy from so long ago, and his work is still shaping the way we live, the way we think.
It really highlights the power of ideas to transcend time and cultures. It's a reminder that innovation can come from unexpected places and have an impact far beyond what anyone could imagine.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share, something for our listeners to ponder?
I'd leave you with this thought. Try to imagine our world without al-Khwarizmi's contributions. What if algebra had never been developed systematically? What if those Hindu-Arabic numerals hadn't spread? It's hard to even wrap your head around.
It's like trying to picture a world without the internet or smartphones. We take it all for granted, but it's built on, centuries of knowledge and discovery.
Exactly. It really underscores how fundamental al-Khwarizmi's work was and how interconnected, well, everything is. His ideas helped pave the way for so much of what we rely on today.
It's funny, before this deep dive, I knew algorithms were important, but I never thought about where the whole concept came from. It just seemed like, well, computer stuff.
And now you see it's part of this incredible story, a story that stretches back over 1,000 years. It's a reminder that even the most complex technologies have roots in basic human ingenuity.
It makes you wonder, what are the al-Khwarizmis of today? Whose ideas are going to shape the world 1,000 years from now?
That's the beauty of it. We're surrounded by innovation, by people pushing the boundaries of knowledge. It's happened all around us, and it's exciting to think about what the future holds.
Well, I know I'll never look at an algorithm the same way again. Or my smartphone, for that matter. This deep dive has given me a whole new perspective.
That's what we hoped for. Sometimes all it takes is a little digging to uncover the fascinating stories behind the things we take for granted.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for taking us on this journey and for helping us understand the incredible legacy of al-Khwarizmi.
It was my pleasure. And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking questions. You never know what amazing connections you might find.